The Ashērah. The word Ashērah is from the root ashar, to be straight, erect, or upright. From this comes the meaning, in a moral sense, to be upright, hence to prosper or be happy. The Ashērah was so called because it was something set upright or erect in the ground and worshipped. The word occurs 40 times, and only a careful study of each passage will give a correct view. Compare with this all that men may think or say about the Ashra is of little value. The word is always rendered grove or groves in the AV, and always left as a proper name in the RV. From a conspectus of the passages, we learn that it was either a living tree with the top cut off and the stump or trunk fashioned into a certain shape, Deuteronomy 16:21, or it was artificially fashioned and set erect in the ground, Isaiah 17:18, 1 Kings 14:15, and 1 Kings 16:33. It was made of wood, Judges 6:26, or stone. What the shape was is indicated in 1 Kings 15:13 and 2 Chronicles 15:16, where the AV, an idol or a grove, should be, as in the RV, an abominable image for an Asherah. It could be cut down, Exodus 34:13, with first occurrence of the word, plucked up, Micah 5:14, burnt, Deuteronomy 12:3, or broken in pieces, 2 Chronicles 34:4. It is often coupled with mazavoth, or stone pillars, RV, and rendered images in AV, connected with Baal worship. That it could not have been a grove is clear from 2 Kings 17:10, where it is forbidden to set one up under any green tree. While it is distinguished from Ashtoreth, the goddess, it is yet associated with that goddess, Ashtoreth being representative of the productive or passive principle of life, and Baal being representative of the generative or active principle. The image which represents the Phoenician Ashtoreth of Paphos as the sole object of worship in her temple was an upright block of stone, anointed with oil and covered with an embroidered cloth. Such stones are to be met with all over the Semitic world, especially in Babylonia, in Syria, Palestine, and Arabia. Even the Mohammedan sacred stone, Kaaba, at Mecca remains an object of reverence. The place Bethel was so called because of its anointed stone. There was another Bethel in northern Israel. 2 columns of stone stood before every Phoenician temple. Those at Tyre are described by Herodotus 2:44, and the pillars of the sun are mentioned in 2 Chronicles 34:4 and Isaiah 17:8, etc. Like every form of religion, it had to do with the flesh, and hence, by the law of evolution, which is seen operating only in human affairs, it soon became corrupted. Evolution is seen in the progress of man's works because he begins from ignorance and goes on learning by his mistakes and failures. From the moment he ends his works, devolution at once sets in and deterioration begins. This is especially true in the religious sphere. All religions have become corrupt. So, with the Asherah, originally a tree symbolical of the tree of life, it was an object of reverence and veneration. Then came the perversion of the earlier idea, which simply honored the origin of life, and it was corrupted and debased into the organ of procreation, which was symbolized by the form and shape given to the Asherah. It was the phallus image of Isaiah 57:8 and the image of the male, Ezekiel 16:17. These symbols in turn became the incentive to all forms of impurity, which were part of its libidinous worship, with the swarms of devotees involved in obscene orgies. The serpent was accepted as the symbol of the nexus, and was thus associated with the pillar and the tree, hence it too became an object of worship. The principal factor in this form of Canaanite idolatry is that it was not a primitive conception of a religious rite, but the corruption of an earlier idea which began with honoring the origin of life. All the ancient systems of idolatry, connected with astrology and mythology, etc., were, in the same way, not original inventions of what was new, but the corruption of what was old, and the perversion of primitive truth. There can be no doubt about its being, in its essence, phallic worship pure and simple, whatever may have been its origin. This abomination was common to all the ancient nations, and relics of it are found today in various forms in India and elsewhere. The men, it's, the Menkirs, it's kind of faded out there. The Menkirs of this Celtic religion are the true descendants of the Asherim. At first, it was centered in the Canaanitish nations, and from them it spread to the others. It was the great abomination of Canaan, and that is one reason why the Canaanites, as the descendants of the Nephilim, had to be destroyed by the sword of Israel. The other reason was the origin of those nations themselves, see Appendix 23 and 25, with which it was closely connected. The first mention of the Ashērah stamps it as being the special object of Jehovah's hatred. It is given to explain his name as jealous, for that is the name he takes in denouncing it. Compare his threats in 1 Kings 14:15, 15:13, 16:32 and 33, and 2 Chronicles 36:14. It led to Israel's banishment from the land, and subsequently to that of Judah's. It is still preserved in veiled language in secret fraternities, Freemasonry, Theosophy, and in the Roman Church. Language so conceals it that probably those who use it today have little idea of what they are perpetuating, while the ancient symbols I-O proclaim sex as the true god of hosts, as the Kabbalah declares. A recrudescence of this is more than hinted at, and it will be better understood when the abomination of Antichrist shall stand once again in the temple of Jerusalem, Matthew 24:15. The following passages will show further the nature of this form of idolatry in these verses in Jeremiah, Hosea, and Amos. The word Ashērah is noted in the margin of each passage where it occurs in the companion Bible, but the following complete list is given to put the student in possession of the whole of the data, and thus to enable him to form his own conclusions. So here's every verse in this chart here. And then there's a couple of footnotes down here. Sec, the perfect way, page 2, and the computation of 666, pages 105 through 109, and 2, Matthew 24:15, compare Daniel 9:27 and Daniel 12:11.